There are things in life that should remain between you and God. We live in a time where people feel the need to share everything, every thought, every struggle, every victory. But wisdom tells us otherwise. Some things are meant to be kept close, protected, and guarded. Things number one, your deepest personal struggles. There are burdens in life that no one else can carry for you. There are wounds in the human heart that no one else can fully understand. Every person walking this earth carries struggles, battles fought in silence, tears shed in the dark. The weight of personal struggles is something that can feel unbearable at times, and in our desperation, we often seek comfort in the wrong places. We look for someone to understand, someone to sympathize, someone to tell us it's all going to be okay. But not everyone is meant to hear the details of your pain. Some struggles are not meant to be shared with the world. Some wounds are too deep for human counsel, and some trials are meant to be wrestled through in the presence of God alone. This is a hard truth to accept because we live in a time when sharing everything has become the norm. People post their emotions online. They share their struggles with anyone who will listen, but in doing so, they often invite the wrong kind of attention. They open the door to judgment, to gossip, to advice that leads them further away from healing rather than closer to it. The world is not a safe place for your deepest pain. There are those who will listen, but not everyone listens to help. Some listen out of curiosity, some listen to find fault, some listen only so they can repeat what you've said behind your back. This is why the Bible warns us to be careful with our words, to be slow to speak and quick to listen. When you share your burdens too freely, you risk placing your heart in the hands of those who will not handle it with care. There is another danger in oversharing your struggles. It can lead to a cycle of seeking validation from people rather than seeking healing from God. When you constantly talk about your problems with others, you may feel temporary relief, but you are not truly being healed. It becomes a pattern where you keep revisiting the same wounds. Instead of allowing God to bind them up, some people grow comfortable in their pain because it brings them attention. But attention is not the same as healing. True healing comes when you take your burdens to the only one who can lift them. The Bible tells us to cast our cares upon the Lord, for He cares for us. It does not say to cast them upon every friend, every acquaintance, every stranger willing to listen. It does not say to cry out to the world for understanding. It says to bring your cares to Him, for He alone can carry them. There is a story in Scripture about Hannah, a woman who was deeply burdened, longing for a child. She was in anguish, and in her pain, she did not run to the people around her for comfort. She did not seek their sympathy. She went straight to the house of the Lord, and there she poured out her soul before God. She wept in His presence, so much so that the priest thought she was drunk. But she was not speaking to men. She was speaking to God, and God heard her. That is the kind of faith we are called to have, a faith that does not seek validation from people, but seeks comfort from God, a faith that understands that no matter how deep the pain, no matter how heavy the burden, God is enough. He is the wonderful counselor, the one who knows your heart even when you cannot find the words to explain it. Some struggles are so personal, so intimate, that they are meant to be kept between you and the Lord. This does not mean you should never confide in anyone. God does use people to encourage and uplift. But you must be discerning. Not everyone is meant to hear your story while you are still in the midst of the storm. There are some things you should not share until God has fully healed you from them. There are testimonies that are not meant to be spoken until they are complete. If you speak too soon, you may open yourself up to doubt, criticism, or discouragement from others. Joseph in the book of Genesis learned this the hard way. God gave him a dream, a vision of his future. But he shared it too soon, and instead of encouragement, he faced jealousy and betrayal from his own brothers. They could not understand what God was doing in his life, and their response was not to support him, but to tear him down. He was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and endured years of hardship before the dream God gave him was fulfilled. There is wisdom in silence. There is power in keeping certain struggles between you and God. Some battles are meant to be fought in the secret place, in prayer, in fasting, in seeking his presence. When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, facing the greatest trial of his life, he did not run to the crowd. He did not share his sorrow with everyone. He went to a quiet place, knelt before his Father, and prayed. Even the disciples, those closest to him, could not fully comprehend the weight of what he was going through. That is why you must be careful who you share your struggles with. Some people will misunderstand, some will judge, some will offer solutions that are not from God, and some will even rejoice in your suffering. The enemy uses people to plant seeds of doubt, to shake your faith, to make you question if God is truly with you. If you tell the wrong person about your pain, they may lead you further into fear instead of leading you back to faith. But when you take your struggles to God, he will never betray your trust. He will never twist your words or use them against you. He will never respond with judgment or cruelty. He will meet you with mercy. He will comfort you in a way no person ever could. He will remind you that you are not alone, that he is working all things for your good, even when you cannot see it. There is peace in keeping some struggles between you and God. There is strength in seeking him first before seeking the counsel of others. And there is wisdom in knowing that not everyone is meant to hear the depths of your heart. God knows, God understands, and God is enough. Things, number 2, your good deeds and charity. When you do something good, when you extend a hand to someone in need, when you give, when you sacrifice, do not do it for the eyes of men. There is a temptation in human nature to seek recognition, to want others to see our good works, to be praised for our kindness, to hear the words, "Look at what they've done." But the moment you seek the approval of men, you lose the reward of heaven. The moment your giving becomes about being seen, it is no longer a pure act of love. It becomes a transaction, an effort to gain something in return, whether that be admiration, gratitude, or validation. God sees what is done in secret. He sees the widow who gives her last 2 coins when no one else notices. He sees the man who feeds the hungry without taking a picture to prove it. He sees the woman who kneels in prayer for others in the quiet of her room where no one applauds her intercession. And it is these unseen acts of goodness that God rewards, because they are done out of love, not for attention. The world teaches us to announce our generosity, to let others know when we have done something noble, but the Word of God says the opposite. Jesus spoke clearly about this when he said, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven." He warned against those who make a spectacle of their giving, who sound the trumpet before they offer charity, who ensure that others witness their kindness so that they may receive the applause of men. The problem is not in the act of giving itself. The problem is in the heart behind it. Is it given out of genuine love, or is it given for recognition? Is it done in humility, or is it done for personal elevation? The Pharisees in Jesus' day were known for putting on a show of righteousness. They would pray loudly in public places. They would fast in a way that made their suffering visible to others. And they would give to the poor in a manner that drew attention to themselves. But Jesus called them hypocrites. Their outward actions appeared holy, but their motives were corrupt. They did not do these things because they loved God or because they loved people. They did them so that others would admire them. And because they sought the praise of men, that was their only reward. They received the approval they longed for, but they forfeited the blessing of heaven. There is something sacred about doing good in secret, when no one knows but God, when no one sees but the one who matters most. Then your act of kindness remains pure. There is no pride in it, no self-exaltation, no ulterior motive, only love. That is why Jesus said, when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. In this world, people often give with conditions. They help, but they expect something in return. They donate, but they make sure their name is attached to the gift. They serve, but they want to be acknowledged for their service. And when that recognition does not come, they feel unappreciated, unnoticed, and even bitter. But true generosity seeks nothing in return. It does not demand thanks. It does not require an audience. It does not need validation, because its source is love. Look at the life of Jesus. He healed the sick. He fed the hungry. He washed the feet of his disciples. He gave everything, including his life. Yet he never did it for attention. In fact, there were times when he performed miracles and told people not to speak of it. He was not concerned with recognition. He was concerned with obedience to the Father. He gave because it was his nature to give. He loved because it was his nature to love. And he never sought the approval of men. When you do good, do not worry about whether people acknowledge it. There will be times when you will help someone and they will not thank you. There will be moments when you will give and no one will recognize the sacrifice you made. There will be times when you will pour yourself out for others, and instead of gratitude, you will receive criticism or indifference. But do not let that discourage you. You are not doing it for them, you are doing it for God. And He sees every act of love, every sacrifice, every moment of service, even when no one else does. There is a great danger in seeking the approval of men. The applause of people is temporary. One day they will praise you, and the next day they will forget you. If you build your life on the recognition of others, you will always be chasing after something that does not last. But when you live for the approval of God, when you give and serve and love without seeking attention, you are storing up treasures in heaven, where no thief can steal, no rust can destroy, and no applause is needed. Think of those who give but expect something in return. Think of those who serve, but only if there is a reward attached. Think of those who do good only when there is an audience watching. Their kindness is not real kindness, it is a performance. Their generosity is not true generosity, it is a strategy for self-promotion. And though they may gain recognition in this life, they lose the far greater reward that comes from God. The Bible tells us that God loves a cheerful giver. But a cheerful giver is not one who gives reluctantly, nor is it one who gives for show. A cheerful giver is one who gives out of joy, out of love, out of a heart that desires to bless others simply because it is the right thing to do. There is freedom in that kind of giving, freedom in knowing that you are not bound by the need for human approval, freedom in knowing that God is the one who rewards in ways far greater than man ever could. When you help the poor, do not seek attention. When you serve others, do not wait for praise. When you give, give because you love, not because you want something in return. And when no one notices, when no one thanks you, when no one acknowledges what you have done, remember this: God sees, and that is enough. Things number 3, your future plans in detail. Not everyone needs to know the plans God has placed in your heart. Not everyone will understand your vision, and not everyone will celebrate what God is doing in your life. Some will doubt you, some will discourage you, and some will even try to stop you. That is why you must be careful with what you share and who you share it with. The dreams and plans that God has given you are precious, and they must be guarded. There is a story in the Bible about a young man named Joseph. God gave him dreams of his future, dreams that showed him rising to a place of great authority. But Joseph made a mistake. He shared those dreams too soon. He told his brothers about them, and instead of rejoicing with him, they became jealous. Instead of supporting him, they hated him. Their jealousy grew until it consumed them, and they plotted against him. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and thought they had destroyed his future. Joseph had a great calling on his life, but because he spoke too soon, he faced betrayal from those closest to him. Not everyone can handle what God is doing in your life. Some people will smile to your face, but secretly hope you fail. Some will pretend to support you, but inside they are envious. Others may not mean harm, but they will speak words of doubt, discouraging you from stepping into what God has for you. If you listen to them, if you allow their negativity to take root in your heart, you may begin to doubt yourself. You may start to question whether you really heard from God. You may hesitate when you should move forward, and you may delay what God has called you to do. There is wisdom in moving in silence. When Nehemiah set out to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, he did not announce his plans to everyone. He inspected the city at night when no one was watching. He did not reveal his strategy until the time was right. Why? Because he knew that there would be opposition. He knew that there would be those who would try to stop the work. And when the opposition came, it came fiercely. There were people who mocked him, people who threatened him, people who tried to intimidate him into quitting. But because Nehemiah had been wise from the beginning, because he had guarded his plans and sought God's guidance, he was able to complete the work despite the attacks. When God gives you a vision, he does not always give it to those around you. He spoke to Noah about the flood, but the people around him did not believe. He called Abraham to a new land, but Abraham had to leave behind everything familiar to follow God's plan. He anointed David to be king, but David spent years running from Saul before he ever sat on the throne. In every case, the calling was real, but the journey required faith, patience, and wisdom. If you share your plans too soon, you may invite unnecessary battles. The enemy listens when you speak. He cannot read your mind, but he can hear your words. When you declare your dreams openly, you make yourself a target. The opposition will come, and if you are not prepared, it can shake your faith. That is why some things must remain between you and God until the right time. Silence is not secrecy, it is wisdom. There is a difference between hiding something out of fear and protecting something out of wisdom. When a farmer plants a seed, he does not dig it up every day to show others that it is growing. He leaves it buried, allowing it to take root in the dark. If he exposes it too soon, it will die before it has the chance to bear fruit. Your plans, your vision, your calling, they are like seed. They need time to grow before they can be revealed. Some people share their plans because they are excited. They want others to know what God is doing in their life. But excitement must be tempered with wisdom. Even Jesus understood this. There were times when he performed miracles and told people not to speak about them. He knew that not everyone was ready to hear, and he knew that premature exposure could bring opposition before the appointed time. There is a time for everything. A time to speak and a time to be silent, a time to act and a time to wait. When God gives you a plan, seek his timing. Ask him when to move and when to remain still. Do not rush ahead because of impatience. Do not seek approval from people when you already have the approval of God. And do not feel the need to explain yourself to those who will never understand. Some will question your path. They will ask why you are doing what you are doing. They will not see what you see, but that is because God did not give them the vision. He gave it to you. You do not need their permission to follow God's will. You do not need their understanding to obey his voice. When God called Moses to lead Israel out of Egypt, there were many who doubted him. There were those who complained, those who resisted, those who wanted to turn back. But Moses did not need their approval. He needed only to obey the one who sent him. Be careful who you allow to speak into your life. Some voices will strengthen your faith, but others will plant seeds of doubt. Some will push you closer to your calling, but others will pull you away. Do not share your plans with those who do not have the faith to believe with you. Do not seek encouragement from those who do not understand what God is doing in your life. Surround yourself with those who walk by faith, not by sight, and above all, keep your eyes on the one who called you. When the time is right, God will reveal what he has been doing in the hidden places. When Joseph was thrown into the pit, when he was sold into slavery, when he was falsely accused and imprisoned, it seemed like his dreams had been destroyed. But what others meant for evil, God used for good. When the appointed time came, Joseph was lifted out of the prison and placed in a position of power, and the very brothers who betrayed him had to come before him in need. If Joseph had allowed their jealousy to stop him, he would have never reached the palace. If he had doubted the dreams God gave him, he would have never fulfilled his purpose. But he trusted God, and in the end, everything happened just as God had shown him. You do not need to announce what God is doing in your life. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. You do not need to explain yourself to those who doubt you. The vision God has given you will speak for itself in time. Trust him, move in wisdom, and let him bring it to pass in his perfect timing. Things. Number 4, your private conversations with God. There are some things that should remain between you and God alone. Your private conversations with him, your prayers, your deepest thoughts, your struggles, your hopes, your fears. These are sacred moments that do not need to be shared with the world. In a time when people feel the need to announce everything, when personal experiences are broadcasted for all to see, there is something powerful about having a relationship with God that is not put on display for others. Prayer is not a performance. It is not meant to be a public demonstration of spirituality. It is an intimate exchange between you and your Creator, a direct line of communication that no one else needs to hear. Jesus himself warned against those who pray for the sake of being seen. He spoke of those who stand on the street corners, lifting their voices, not because they long for God, but because they long for the attention of people. They want to be admired for their devotion. They want others to see them as holy. But Jesus said that those who pray in such a way have already received their reward, the praise of men. True prayer happens in the secret place. Jesus said, when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. There is something profound about meeting God in the quiet, away from distractions, away from the noise of the world, away from the opinions of others. In that place, you can be honest. You can pour out your heart without fear of judgment. You can lay your burdens before him, knowing that he listens. There are prayers that no one else will ever hear. Prayers whispered in the middle of the night when sleep will not come. prayers cried out in moments of desperation when there is no one else to turn to, prayers offered in silence when words fail, but the heart still speaks. These are the prayers that shape a person's faith. These are the prayers that draw a soul closer to God. Not every prayer needs to be spoken aloud. God hears what is unspoken. He knows the thoughts before they are formed, the words before they are uttered, the cries of the heart before they are given a voice. Sometimes the most powerful prayers are the ones that never leave the lips, the silent prayers of a weary soul, the quiet surrender of a heart in need of God's presence. There is a reason Jesus often withdrew to solitary places to pray. Even though he was surrounded by people, even though he was constantly teaching, healing, and ministering to others, he knew the importance of being alone with the Father. He would rise early in the morning before the world awakened. He would go to the mountains, to the wilderness, to the quiet places where he could speak with God without interruption. If Jesus, the Son of God, needed that private time with the Father, how much more do we? There is nothing wrong with praying with others. There is power in agreement. There is strength in coming together as a community of faith. But there are some prayers that are meant for you and God alone. There are some struggles that are too personal to be shared with anyone else. There are some confessions that only He needs to hear. People will not always understand your prayers if you share too much. Some will judge. Some will criticize. Some will offer opinions that do more harm than good. Others may take what you share and use it against you. That is why wisdom is needed. That is why discernment is necessary. Not every conversation with God needs to be spoken of. Some things should remain between you and Him, guarded and protected from the influence of others. Think of Hannah, the mother of Samuel. She prayed in such deep anguish that the priest Eli thought she was drunk. But she was not speaking to man, she was speaking to God from the depths of her soul. She poured out her heart, weeping before Him, making a vow that no one else could understand. And God heard her. He answered her. He honored her private prayer. And through her, a great prophet was born. Think of David, the man after God's own heart. His prayers were raw, unfiltered, filled with emotion. He spoke of his fears, his failures, his longings, his love for God. Many of his prayers were recorded in the Psalms, but there were countless more that no one ever heard. There were moments when he was alone in the fields as a shepherd, singing to God with no one but the sheep to listen. There were times when he fled for his life, crying out to God in the caves where no one could hear. These were the prayers that sustained him. These were the prayers that deepened his faith. There is something about praying in solitude, something about having that personal connection with God that does not need to be shared or explained. Some of the most powerful moments with God happen in the quiet. It is in those moments that He speaks. It is in those moments that He strengthens, heals, restores, and gives direction. The world encourages people to speak, to share, to let others in on every aspect of their lives. But God calls His people to a different standard. There is a beauty in secrecy. There is a sacredness in private devotion. There is a strength that comes from knowing that your relationship with God is not dependent on public displays or the approval of others. When you have a secret history with God, when you have a private prayer life that is not for show, you develop a faith that cannot be shaken. You are not swayed by the opinions of people. You do not seek validation from others. You do not need applause for your devotion, because you know that God sees, you know that He hears, and you know that what happens in the secret place will be rewarded in ways far greater than human recognition. Some of the greatest moves of God begin in hidden places. Some of the most powerful testimonies are birthed in moments of private surrender. Some of the deepest transformations happen when no one is watching. This is why your private conversations with God matter. This is why your secret prayers are so important. They are the foundation of your faith. They are the lifeline of your spiritual journey. They are the moments that shape your destiny. Do not feel the need to share everything God is doing in your life. Do not feel pressured to make your prayers public. Guard your intimacy with Him. Treasure the moments that are just between you and your Father. Seek Him in the quiet, in the stillness, in the hidden places where only He can hear, because in those moments He is near. In those moments He speaks. In those moments He moves in ways that no one else may see, but that will change your life forever. Your relationship with God is personal. It is sacred. It is not meant to be displayed for the approval of others, nor is it meant to be explained to those who may not understand. Some things must remain between you and Him. Your struggles, your prayers, your sacrifices, your dreams. What you share with God in secret is the foundation of your faith, the place where your trust in Him is built and strengthened. When you guard your private moments with God, you allow Him to shape you without interference. You give Him space to work in your heart, to speak to you, to refine you. The world may push for recognition, but God honors those who seek Him in humility and secrecy. The most powerful prayers are not always the loudest, and the most profound encounters with God often happen in the quiet places. Trust that what is spoken in secret will be answered in time. Trust that what is sown in private devotion will bear fruit in due season. And trust that the God who hears in the secret place is faithful to fulfill His promises. Walk with Him, seek Him, and cherish the moments that belong to you and Him alone. There are things you may be holding on to right now that are quietly opening the door to darkness in your life. The Bible tells us to have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them, Ephesians 5:11. If you want to walk in the fullness of God's protection and blessing, you must cleanse your home from anything that invites the enemy in. Here are 7 demonic items that you must remove immediately. Item number 1, occult objects. Occult objects may seem harmless to some, often marketed as tools for self-discovery, entertainment, or spiritual enlightenment, but make no mistake, these items serve as doorways to forces far beyond human understanding. When you bring them into your home, you are inviting in something that does not belong in the life of a believer. These objects have been used for centuries to channel spirits, predict the future, or manipulate unseen forces. Many do not realize that behind these practices lies a spiritual deception designed to pull people away from God. The Bible is clear about God's stance on the occult. In Deuteronomy 18:10-12, it warns against divination, sorcery, interpreting omens, engaging in witchcraft, and consulting with spirits. The reason is simple. When you seek power, knowledge, or guidance from any source other than God, you are stepping into dangerous territory. Occult practices operate outside the will of the Lord, and they come with consequences. Many who have dabbled in these things have found themselves tormented, experiencing fear, oppression, or unexplained disturbances in their homes. One of the most common occult objects is the Ouija board. It is often seen as just a game, but there is nothing playful about opening a gateway to the unknown. Countless stories exist of people who have used this board thinking they were speaking to lost loved ones or harmless spirits, only to be met with terrifying encounters. Evil spirits do not introduce themselves with red eyes and horns. They masquerade as innocent voices, offering wisdom, comfort, or curiosity. The moment you engage, the moment you seek answers outside of God's Word, you have given permission for something dark to enter. Tarot cards are another dangerous tool many keep in their homes without realizing the spiritual implications. These cards are not just random illustrations. They are designed to predict the future, reveal hidden truths, and provide insight from unknown sources. But who is truly behind this information? The Bible tells us that Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. The enemy will use whatever means necessary to lead people away from the truth. Tarot readings may seem accurate at first, but they pull individuals deeper into reliance on spiritual forces that do not align with God's kingdom. Crystals, pendulums, and other objects used for divination or energy healing fall into the same category. While some believe these items hold natural energy or vibrations, they are often used in practices that contradict Scripture. Many New Age teachings encourage people to seek balance, protection, or healing through these objects rather than turning to the Lord. When people place their faith in an object to bring peace, love, or wisdom, they are replacing God with a counterfeit source of power. The danger is not in the object itself, but in what it represents and the spiritual doors it may open. Witchcraft materials such as spell books, charms, and talismans are also extremely dangerous to keep in your home. Some believe they can use these items for good, to manifest love, protection, or success, but Scripture makes no distinction between good and bad magic. Any attempt to manipulate the spiritual realm apart from God's authority is a rebellion against Him. These objects may be passed down from family members or given as gifts, but their origin does not change their nature. They are rooted in deception, and the only way to truly break free from their influence is to remove them completely. Many people bring occult objects into their homes out of ignorance, unaware of their deeper spiritual significance. Some may collect these items out of fascination, seeing them as pieces of art, history, or culture, but the enemy does not care why they are in your possession. He only cares that they are there. The presence of these objects can lead to unexplained fear, anxiety, or a sense of oppression that lingers in the atmosphere of a home. Some experience nightmares, disturbances, or a constant feeling of unease without realizing that the root cause is sitting on a shelf or hidden in a drawer. If you find yourself drawn to these things, ask yourself why. Is it curiosity? Is it a desire for control over the unknown? Is it a fascination with supernatural power? The enemy preys on these desires, offering quick answers and temporary excitement while leading people further from the truth. True power, true wisdom, and true peace can only be found in God. If there is anything in your home tied to the occult, no matter how small, it is time to remove it completely. There is no safe way to engage with darkness. Item number 2, cursed or ritualistic artifacts. Cursed or ritualistic artifacts are often brought into homes without people realizing the spiritual weight they carry. Many of these objects originate from pagan ceremonies, occult practices, or cultural traditions that are deeply rooted in false spiritual beliefs. They may be statues, masks, jewelry, or even simple trinkets. Yet their presence can have a profound effect on the spiritual atmosphere of a home. People often receive these items as gifts, purchase them as souvenirs, or inherit them from relatives, unaware of the rituals or ceremonies that may have been performed over them. But just because something appears harmless does not mean it is without consequence. Throughout history, cultures around the world have created objects used in spiritual rituals, idol worship, or protection spells. These artifacts are often crafted with the intent of summoning spirits, channeling supernatural forces, or invoking blessings from false gods. What many fail to understand is that these practices do not operate in a neutral spiritual space. Any object that has been dedicated to another deity, used in witchcraft, or connected to spiritual ceremonies outside of God's truth carries an attachment to the realm from which it came. When these objects enter a home, they bring that same spiritual influence with them. Some of the most dangerous objects are those that have been deliberately cursed or dedicated in rituals. In many occult traditions, practitioners infuse objects with spiritual energy, calling upon demonic forces to empower them. These can include voodoo dolls, talismans, amulets, and even everyday household items that have been used in dark practices. Some of these objects are created with the specific intention of bringing harm, while others are meant to offer protection. But make no mistake, any power that does not come from God ultimately comes from a source that is in rebellion against Him. Even objects meant to bring good luck or ward off evil can be an open door to spiritual deception. One of the most overlooked sources of cursed artifacts comes from statues and images of false gods. Many people display these in their homes as decorations, cultural symbols, or collector's items, believing them to be harmless. But the Bible is clear about the danger of idols. In Exodus 20:3-5, God commands His people to have no other gods before Him and to not make or worship graven images. These idols represent spiritual entities that have been worshipped for generations, and they carry with them the spiritual residue of those who have bowed before them. Whether it is a small figurine, an ancient relic, or a modern piece of art, if it represents a false god, it does not belong in the home of a believer. Another common example of cursed or ritualistic artifacts is tribal or indigenous masks used in spiritual ceremonies. Many of these masks were originally crafted for rituals involving ancestor worship, spirit summoning, or protection rites. People purchased them as souvenirs from different parts of the world, unaware that they may have been used in ceremonies invoking spirits. The same applies to certain types of jewelry, especially those featuring occult symbols, astrological signs, or charms believed to bring supernatural benefits. Even if these items are worn with no intention of engaging in spiritual practices, their origins and past uses matter. Occasionally, people experience strange occurrences after bringing such objects into their homes. Some report an unshakable feeling of unease, disturbing dreams, or unexplained disturbances such as objects moving, lights flickering, or sudden changes in mood or atmosphere. While skeptics may dismiss these experiences as coincidence, those who understand the spiritual realm know that demonic forces can attach themselves to objects. When an artifact has been used in occult practices, it does not simply lose its spiritual significance when it changes ownership. Even second-hand furniture, paintings, or antiques can carry a history that affects the environment of a home. Many objects have been in the possession of people who engaged in dark spiritual practices, and those connections do not simply vanish when the item is sold or given away. This is why spiritual discernment is crucial when bringing anything into a home. It is not about superstition or fear. It is about recognizing that the spiritual realm is real, and that certain objects carry the weight of the rituals and intentions placed upon them. Item number 3, dark entertainment. Dark entertainment is one of the most overlooked ways the enemy gains access to people's lives. Many believe that what they watch, listen to, and read is simply a matter of personal preference, having no real impact on their spiritual condition. But the Bible warns that the eyes and ears are gateways to the soul. What a person consumes on a regular basis shapes their thoughts, influences their emotions, and ultimately determines the atmosphere of their home. Entertainment that glorifies evil, promotes fear, or celebrates rebellion against God is not neutral. It carries a spiritual influence that can weaken faith, distort truth, and invite darkness into a person's life. Horror movies are one of the most obvious examples of dark entertainment. Many are filled with demonic imagery, supernatural terror, and portrayals of possession, curses, and rituals. Some are even inspired by real occult practices designed to make evil seem powerful and unavoidable. People often watch these films for the thrill, believing they are harmless, but they do not realize the long-term effects on their minds and spirits. Fear is not just an emotion, it is a tool of the enemy. And when people willingly expose themselves to terrifying images and sounds, they are opening a door to anxiety, nightmares, and spiritual oppression. The more they consume, the more desensitized they become to the reality of evil. Beyond horror films, many mainstream movies and television shows are filled with occult themes, violence, and perverse content. Shows that depict witchcraft, sorcery, and demonic activity often present these practices as exciting, normal, or even heroic. They introduce audiences to spells, rituals, and supernatural powers that are presented as fiction but are often rooted in real spiritual concepts. Over time, these ideas become ingrained in the minds of viewers, making them more accepting of practices that the Bible strictly forbids. The enemy works subtly, disguising darkness as entertainment so that people let their guard down and unknowingly invite destructive influences into their homes. Music is another powerful medium through which dark entertainment spreads its influence. Many popular songs contain lyrics that promote rebellion, lust, violence, or even direct worship of evil. Some artists openly admit to being influenced by spirits, channeling dark forces in their creative process. Music is spiritual by nature. It has the power to uplift, inspire, and bring people into the presence of God. But it can also pull them into darkness. When someone constantly listens to songs that glorify sin, their mind and heart become conditioned to accept and even desire the things being promoted. The words and beats they absorb begin to shape their thoughts, their attitudes, and their outlook on life. Books, comics, and graphic novels also play a major role in spreading dark themes. Many works of fiction romanticize the occult, making sorcery, necromancy, and demonic power seem attractive and beneficial. They draw readers into worlds where good and evil are blurred, where darkness is not something to be rejected but embraced. Some books go even further, providing detailed descriptions of real-life spells, rituals, and incantations, leading curious readers deeper into spiritual deception. People often underestimate the power of the written word, but what they fill their minds with will eventually shape their beliefs and behaviors. Video games have also become a major source of dark entertainment. Many games revolve around themes of death, destruction, and demonic warfare, allowing players to engage in violent, sinful, or occult activities as part of the gameplay. Some games even include actual satanic symbols, blood rituals, or direct interactions with spirits and dark forces. When people spend hours immersed in these virtual worlds, they become spiritually dull to the reality of what they are engaging with. What starts as a harmless pastime can become an open invitation for destructive influences to take root in their thoughts and emotions. Even social media has become a breeding ground for dark entertainment. With instant access to millions of videos, images, and discussions, people are constantly exposed to content that glorifies darkness. From viral challenges that promote dangerous behaviors to influencers who openly practice witchcraft and encourage others to do the same, the digital world is filled with hidden traps designed to pull people away from truth. The more time people spend consuming these things, the more their minds are shaped by the messages being pushed into their subconscious. What people entertain themselves with is never just about amusement. It either draws them closer to God or pulls them away. When homes are filled with entertainment that promotes darkness, fear, and rebellion, the spiritual atmosphere shifts. Peace is replaced with unrest. Faith is replaced with doubt, and the presence of God is gradually pushed out. The choices people make about what they allow into their homes and minds determine the kind of spiritual environment they create around them. Item number 4, New Age and mystic symbols. New Age and mystic symbols have become deeply embedded in modern culture, often seen in fashion, jewelry, home decor, and even self-help practices. Many people embrace these symbols without understanding their true spiritual significance. They assume they are harmless, aesthetic, or even beneficial for personal growth and enlightenment. But these symbols are far more than artistic designs or cultural relics. They carry deep spiritual meanings that can invite deception and open doors to forces opposed to God. The New Age movement promotes a blend of Eastern mysticism, occult practices, and self-deification, all under the guise of self-discovery and spiritual enlightenment. It teaches that truth is subjective, that divine power is found within, and that all religions lead to the same destination. At its core, it denies the authority of God, replacing him with a belief in human potential, universal energy, and unseen cosmic forces. Many of its symbols reflect these ideas, representing a counterfeit spirituality that subtly draws people away from biblical truth. One of the most recognized symbols in the New Age movement is the all-seeing eye, often depicted within a triangle. This symbol has long been associated with secret societies and mystical teachings, representing enlightenment, hidden knowledge, and divine consciousness. While some believe it represents wisdom, in reality it is rooted in occult traditions that promote a belief in spiritual awakening apart from God. People wear it as jewelry or display it in their homes, unaware that it signifies an invitation to supernatural forces outside of God's authority. The yin-yang symbol is another common representation found in homes, clothing, and accessories. It originates from Taoism and is meant to depict the balance of opposing forces, light and dark, good and evil, male and female. This philosophy suggests that good and evil are interconnected, rather than recognizing that evil is the result of sin and separation from God. The Bible makes it clear that righteousness and wickedness do not exist in balance, but in opposition. Light does not coexist with darkness, it overcomes it. The acceptance of yin-yang thinking conditions people to see evil as a necessary force rather than something to reject and overcome through faith. Crystals have also become a significant part of New Age symbolism. While God created crystals as beautiful parts of nature, they have been repurposed in spiritual practices as conduits of healing energy and personal transformation. Many believe that different stones hold vibrations or properties that can cleanse negative energy, attract love, or bring success. This belief shifts reliance away from God and onto created objects, making them substitutes for faith in His power and provision. The use of crystals in meditation, energy healing, or manifestation rituals is a direct participation in spiritual deception, leading people away from trusting in God's will. Another symbol deeply connected to New Age mysticism is the mandala, a geometric pattern used in meditation and spiritual visualization. Many use mandalas in yoga practices or as decorations in their homes, unaware that they originate from Hindu and Buddhist traditions, meant to aid in reaching altered states of consciousness. These intricate designs are often associated with summoning spirits, channeling cosmic energy, or achieving oneness with the universe. While they are marketed as tools for relaxation and focus, their original purpose is to open the mind to spiritual influences that contradict God's truth. Astrological symbols also play a major role in New Age belief systems. Zodiac signs, planetary symbols, and birth charts are used to interpret personality traits, predict future events, and seek guidance from celestial forces. Many people casually follow astrology, reading daily horoscopes or identifying with their star signs, thinking of it as harmless entertainment. But the Bible explicitly warns against divination and seeking knowledge from the stars. Astrology promotes the idea that a person's fate is written in the cosmos rather than in God's sovereign plan. It places trust in created things rather than in the Creator, leading people away from dependence on Him. The pentagram is another powerful symbol with deep occult connections. While some argue that the five-pointed star is a neutral or even positive symbol, it has long been used in witchcraft, satanic rituals, and occult ceremonies. When displayed with one point facing upward, it is associated with invoking supernatural forces. When inverted, with 2 points facing upward, it is often linked to Satanism, symbolizing rebellion against God. Many people wear pentagram jewelry, use it in home decor, or encounter it in media without realizing its association with dark spiritual practices. Even seemingly innocent symbols like the peace sign or dream catchers have roots in mystical and spiritual traditions. Dream catchers, for example, originate from Native American shamanism, designed to filter dreams and capture negative spirits. While many see them as decorative or sentimental, they carry spiritual meanings that do not align with biblical truth. The peace sign, which became popular during the 1960 counterculture movement, has historical connections to anti-Christian symbolism and rebellion against divine authority. These symbols, whether worn as jewelry, displayed in homes, or used in personal practices, influence the spiritual atmosphere of an environment. Many people do not realize that objects with occult or mystical origins can serve as spiritual gateways, attracting unseen forces into their lives. They may dismiss their significance, believing that intention is all that matters. But throughout history, symbols have carried power, representing ideologies, beliefs, and spiritual allegiance. When a home is filled with New Age and mystic symbols, it creates an atmosphere that is not aligned with God's presence. The deception is subtle, yet its effects are real, leading people further into confusion, idolatry, and spiritual vulnerability. Item number 5, objects from sinful or corrupt sources. Objects from sinful or corrupt sources carry a spiritual weight that many people fail to recognize. They may seem ordinary on the surface, but their origins and past use can bring unseen consequences into a home. Throughout history, certain objects have been tied to sinful activities, wicked intentions, and ungodly practices. When these items are kept in a household, they can serve as reminders of sin, open doors to spiritual oppression, or create an atmosphere that is not aligned with God's holiness. The Bible repeatedly warns about the dangers of associating with things that have been dedicated to corruption. Yet, many people unknowingly bring such objects into their lives. One of the most common categories of corrupt objects includes items tied to sexual immorality. These can include explicit materials, inappropriate artwork, or even clothing associated with a past of impurity. Many people hold on to gifts from past relationships, souvenirs from ungodly experiences, or objects linked to a life they have left behind. These items may seem insignificant, but they carry memories and spiritual connections that can affect a person's mindset and emotion. Keeping objects that were once part of sinful activities can subtly draw a person back into old temptations, stirring desires and thoughts that should have been left behind. The enemy works through memories, using tangible reminders to bring past sins into the present, creating a cycle of struggle and guilt. Another form of corrupt objects comes from items that have been stolen or acquired through dishonest means. Many people hold on to things that were taken unlawfully, whether intentionally or unknowingly. This can include items shoplifted in the past, possessions obtained through deceitful business dealings, or even things given by someone who acquired them through sin. Even if years have passed, keeping stolen items can create an invisible spiritual burden, keeping a person connected to the wrongdoing of the past. God calls his people to walk in integrity, and part of that includes removing anything in their possession that was not obtained in righteousness. Objects used in violent acts or criminal activities also bring spiritual consequences. Weapons used in crimes, personal belongings of those involved in wicked deeds, or items taken from places where great harm was committed can all carry a dark presence. People sometimes collect memorabilia related to violence, war, or tragic events, thinking of them as historical artifacts or sentimental keepsakes. However, these objects can serve as links to the spirits of destruction, fear, and death. Surrounding oneself with items connected to violence can subtly influence emotions, leading to unrest, anger, or a heavy spiritual atmosphere in a home. Gifts from people who practice witchcraft, sorcery, or any form of dark spirituality can also bring a spiritual presence into a home. Some objects are given with good intentions, while others are knowingly cursed or dedicated to dark purposes before being handed over. Even if the giver did not consciously attach any rituals to the object, items from individuals involved in occult practices can carry a residual spiritual connection. Jewelry, clothing, books, and even household decorations received from such people should be examined carefully. Many believers have experienced unexplained disturbances in their homes, only to discover that certain objects were the source of the disruption. Music, books, and movies that glorify sin also serve as corrupt influences. Some people keep collections of media that once fueled their sinful lifestyles, believing they are harmless now that they no longer actively engage with them. However, even if an object is not being used, its presence can affect the spiritual atmosphere of a home. Many books contain explicit content, occult teachings, or philosophies that contradict God's truth. Music with lyrics that promote lust, rebellion, or darkness can create an environment where negative spiritual influences thrive. Movies filled with blasphemy, perversion, and wickedness can leave lasting impressions on the mind, normalizing sin and desensitizing the soul to holiness. Even items that seem insignificant, like clothing associated with ungodly affiliations, can carry an influence. Clothing that represents rebellion, promotes sinful behavior, or is linked to a dark past can serve as a constant reminder of things that are not pleasing to God. Some fashion brands openly use occult symbols, demonic imagery, or blasphemous themes. Yet many people wear them without realizing what they are representing. Others hold on to clothing worn during times of deep sin or struggle, keeping tangible links to moments that should have been surrendered and forgotten. Objects obtained through sinful relationships or unholy alliances also have a way of influencing a person's present spiritual walk. Items exchanged in ungodly relationships, gifts given by those who led a person into sin, or possessions tied to seasons of rebellion can serve as subtle ties to the past. Some people keep letters, photos, or sentimental objects from relationships that were outside of God's will. unable to fully move forward because they are still holding on to the physical reminders. Letting go of these things is not just about removing clutter, it is about cutting off spiritual ties that keep a person from stepping fully into God's plan. What people choose to keep in their homes reflects what they value. If a home is filled with objects tied to sinful or corrupt sources, it creates an environment where spiritual compromise can take root. The enemy does not need an invitation in words when he is given access through the things a person surrounds themselves with. The presence of such items can hinder spiritual growth, create unnecessary battles, and invite struggles that could have been avoided. Recognizing these objects for what they truly are is the first step toward removing them and restoring a home to a place of peace, purity, and God's presence. Item number 6, unholy images and statues. Unholy images and statues have found their way into many homes, often disguised as art, decorations, or cultural relics. People collect them for their beauty, history, or sentimental value, unaware of the deeper spiritual impact they carry. These objects are not mere symbols. They represent spiritual realities and can serve as gateways for unseen influences. The Bible warns repeatedly against idolatry, graven images, and the worship of false gods. Yet many unknowingly bring items into their homes that have connections to paganism, false religions, and demonic influences, allowing spiritual oppression to take root without realizing it. One of the most common forms of unholy images is artwork depicting false gods, mythological deities, or demonic figures. Many people proudly display statues, paintings, or sculptures representing gods from ancient civilizations, believing they hold historical or artistic significance. These images, however, were originally created for worship, devotion, or spiritual rituals, and they still carry that spiritual weight. Whether it is an idol from Hinduism, a statue of a Greek or Roman deity, or an image of a so-called protective spirit, these representations stand in opposition to the one true God. The presence of such images in a home invites confusion, leading people to mix truth with deception. Many religious statues from non-Christian traditions are also displayed as decoration, yet their origins are deeply rooted in spiritual practices that do not honor God. Buddha statues, for example, are widely used in homes, businesses, and gardens as symbols of peace and prosperity, but their true purpose is to invite the spirit of Buddhism and its teachings. Some believe that rubbing the belly of a Buddha statue brings good fortune, engaging in a form of idolatry without realizing it. Statues of Hindu gods, often placed in homes as tokens of culture or luck, represent entities that have been worshipped for centuries through rituals, offerings, and prayers. The Bible makes it clear that there is only one God, and any representation of a false deity is an abomination in His sight. Demonic and occult imagery has also become widespread in modern culture, appearing in paintings, sculptures, and even clothing. Many people purchase artwork featuring skulls, dark figures, or grotesque creatures, believing it to be nothing more than a stylistic choice. Some display statues of gargoyles, dragons, or horned beings, unaware that such imagery has long been associated with spiritual darkness and supernatural forces. What people see as artistic expression often has deeper roots in ancient mysticism, occult practices, and satanic symbolism. Surrounding oneself with such images creates an atmosphere of spiritual unrest, desensitizing the mind to the reality of evil and its influence. Another form of unholy images includes artwork depicting violence, death, and suffering. Many collect paintings or sculptures that showcase tragic or horrifying scenes, filling their environment with images that reflect darkness rather than light. Some are drawn to depictions of fallen angels, tortured souls, or supernatural battles between good and evil, believing them to be thought-provoking or dramatic. However, these images often create a sense of unease and spiritual heaviness, inviting thoughts of fear, despair, or aggression. The Bible tells believers to think on things that are pure, lovely, and of good report, yet many unknowingly fill their homes with imagery that cultivates the opposite. Celebrity and pop culture idols are another category of unholy images that have subtly taken hold in many households. Posters, paintings, or sculptures of musicians, actors, and influencers are often treated with the same reverence as religious artifacts. Some people dedicate entire spaces in their homes to their favorite public figures, creating a form of modern idolatry. Many celebrities openly promote sinful lifestyles, rebellion against God, and even occult practices, yet their images are proudly displayed as sources of admiration. This devotion can lead to an unhealthy attachment, where admiration turns into worship and worldly figures take the place of spiritual role models. Statues and images associated with ancestral worship or cultural superstitions are also common in many homes. Some families pass down relics that were used in spiritual ceremonies, believing them to be valuable heirlooms. Others keep objects associated with rituals meant to bring protection, ward off evil spirits, or bless a household. These statues and images may have been used in prayers, sacrifices, or summoning rituals, creating a direct link to spiritual forces that oppose God. Even if one does not actively participate in these practices, keeping such objects in a home allows their influence to linger. Even within Christianity, there are images and statues that can lead to a distorted focus. Some people place their faith in statues of saints, angels, or religious figures, treating them as objects of divine power rather than representations of faith. While religious artwork itself is not inherently wrong, when people begin to venerate these images rather than seeking a direct relationship with God, they enter into idolatry. Some cultures incorporate rituals around these statues, lighting candles, offering prayers, or performing acts of devotion that place more trust in the object than in the Creator. Many people unknowingly keep unholy images and statues in their homes because they have not considered their origins or spiritual significance. Some may argue that their intentions are pure, that they do not believe in the power of these objects. But spiritual realities are not dependent on human belief. The presence of these items creates an open invitation, whether one acknowledges it or not. A home should be a place of peace, purity, and God's presence, yet when filled with images and statues that glorify darkness, false gods, or sinful lifestyles, it becomes an environment where spiritual confusion and oppression can take hold. Item number 7, items that stir up sinful desires. Items that stir up sinful desires may seem harmless at first glance, but they carry the power to influence thoughts, emotions, and actions in ways that many fail to recognize. What people allow into their homes shapes their spiritual environment, and certain objects act as subtle invitations for temptation, compromise, and sin. The enemy does not always attack in obvious ways. He often works through small, seemingly insignificant things that plant seeds of lust, greed, pride, or rebellion. People may hold on to these items for sentimental reasons, personal pleasure, or simply because they do not see the harm in them. But these objects can become stumbling blocks that lead them away from a life of holiness and obedience to God. One of the most common categories of these items includes materials that promote sexual immorality. Magazines, books, movies, and online content that glorify lust and impurity can create an atmosphere where sinful desires are constantly stirred. Many justify keeping such items by saying they are just entertainment or art, but they are far more than that. The images and ideas they present enter the mind and settle in the heart, making it harder to resist temptation. What the eyes see, the heart begins to desire. Even if a person believes they have control over their thoughts, the enemy uses repeated exposure to wear down resistance, leading to secret struggles and hidden sin. Clothing can also be a source of temptation, both for the one wearing it and for those who see it. Some keep outfits from their past that were once worn to attract attention or entice others. Even if the person has changed their lifestyle, holding on to such clothing can create an attachment to a former identity, stirring up old desires. Others wear provocative or immodest clothing that encourages vanity and pride, feeding a need for validation from the world rather than seeking approval from God. What people wear can reflect their values, and dressing in a way that invites lust or flaunts the body can be a subtle but dangerous trap. Objects linked to past relationships, especially those tied to ungodly connections, can also stir up sinful desires. Love letters, gifts, photos, or personal items from a past romantic relationship can keep emotional and spiritual ties alive long after the relationship has ended. Some hold on to these items as reminders of better days, but in reality, they keep the heart chained to something that God has already called them to leave behind. These objects can cause old wounds to reopen, rekindle unhealthy emotions, and create an unnecessary struggle between the past and the future. When God removes someone from a person's life, holding on to their belongings can be a way of resisting his plan and keeping the door open to temptation. Alcohol and substances that lead to indulgence and loss of self-control are also items that stir up sinful desires. Many keep bottles of alcohol in their homes, even if they do not drink regularly, believing it is just for occasional use or for guests. However, having easy access to these substances can create a temptation that did not exist before. For those who have struggled with addiction or reckless behavior in the past, keeping such items nearby is like keeping a doorway open for sin to return. Even prescription drugs that have been misused in the past can serve as reminders of sinful habits, making it easier to fall back into destructive patterns. Music with lyrics that promote lust, violence, greed, or rebellion can also be a significant influence. Many people underestimate the power of music, but the words and beats that fill a home can shape the atmosphere and affect the heart. Some songs glorify promiscuity, normalize sinful lifestyles, or encourage pride and materialism. When people listen to these songs repeatedly, the messages become ingrained in their thinking, making it harder to resist the temptations they promote. Some argue that they don't listen to the lyrics, but words have power, and what is constantly heard begins to shape desires and behaviors. Even seemingly innocent objects such as posters, artwork, or memorabilia can stir up sinful desires. Some display images of celebrities, influences, or fictional characters that feed an obsession with appearance, status, or worldly success. Others keep objects that remind them of times when they lived in rebellion, stirring up a longing for what they once had. When these things are placed in a home, they serve as constant reminders of desires that do not align with God's will. They create a silent but persistent influence, shaping thoughts and emotions without a person even realizing it. Technology has also become one of the greatest sources of temptation in modern times. Phones, computers, and tablets are not inherently sinful, but they provide easy access to content that can lead the heart astray. Many people struggle with what they watch, read, or engage with online, yet they refuse to set boundaries or remove the apps, websites, or contacts that make sin so easily accessible. Some keep digital reminders of past relationships, inappropriate conversations, or content that feeds ungodly desires, making it difficult to break free from temptation. A person may have the best intentions to resist sin, but if the doorway remains open, it is only a matter of time before compromise takes place. The things that people keep in their homes either bring them closer to God or pull them further away. Every object carries an influence, and some items stir up desires that lead to spiritual battles, unnecessary struggles, and repeated cycles of sin. Many times people wonder why they continue to face the same temptations, not realizing that the answer is in what they allow to remain in their personal space. A home should be a place of purity, peace, and the presence of God. Yet, when filled with things that stir up sinful desires, it becomes a battleground for spiritual conflict. When people invite certain objects into their homes, they often do so without considering the spiritual impact. What seems like an innocent decoration, a nostalgic keepsake, or a simple form of entertainment can, in reality, be an open door to darkness, temptation, and spiritual oppression. The enemy works subtly, using these items to influence thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, often without a person realizing it. The Bible warns against idolatry, unclean things, and associations with darkness, because God knows how these influences can take root and pull His people away from Him. A home should be a place of peace, purity, and God's presence. Yet, when filled with occult objects, cursed artifacts, dark entertainment, and symbols of false beliefs, it becomes an environment where confusion and oppression thrive. Objects from sinful or corrupt sources, unholy images, and items that stir up sinful desires create strongholds that hinder spiritual growth. Many people struggle with recurring temptations, unexplained heaviness, or a lack of peace in their homes, unaware that the very things surrounding them are contributing to their battles. True freedom and spiritual clarity come when a person removes what does not honor God. It is not enough to simply recognize these objects. There must be a decision to separate from them completely. The enemy only has access where he is given permission, and as long as these things remain, so does the invitation. Purging a home of unclean and unholy items is an act of obedience, a declaration that nothing will take priority over God. The more a person aligns their environment with His will, the more they will experience His peace, power, and protection in their lives. God knows you personally. That may be hard to grasp in a world that often makes us feel insignificant, overlooked, and forgotten. We live in a time where people feel like just another number, just another face in the crowd. But to God, you are not just a nameless soul among billions. You are known, seen, and loved in a way deeper than you can imagine. Before the foundations of the world were laid, He knew you. He knew the color of your eyes before they ever opened, the sound of your voice before you ever spoke, and the number of hairs on your head before a single one appeared. The Bible tells us that He knit us together in our mother's womb, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That means you are not an accident. You are not a mistake. God intentionally designed every detail about you, and He did so with purpose. Think about that for a moment. The God who spoke the stars into existence, who commands the oceans, who holds the universe in the palm of His hand, He knows your name. He knows your thoughts before you even think them. He knows your struggles, your fears, your dreams, and your pain. There is nothing about you that is hidden from Him. You may be able to put on a brave face in front of others. You may be able to hide your pain from the world. But God sees the real you. He sees the nights you've cried yourself to sleep. He sees the silent battles you fight in your heart. He sees the burdens you carry, even the ones you don't speak about, and He cares. The Bible is full of moments where God demonstrates His intimate knowledge of people. When Jesus met Nathanael, He told him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." It wasn't just that Jesus knew His name. He knew where He had been, what He had been thinking, and what was in His heart. And when Nathanael realized that, he fell to his knees in amazement. That same Jesus who saw Nathanael under the fig tree sees you today. He knows where you've been. He knows what you're going through. And He's calling you. Look at Zacchaeus. He was a tax collector, despised by society, a man who had likely lived most of his life feeling rejected and unwanted. But the moment Jesus passed by, He stopped and called him by name. "Zacchaeus, come down, for today I must stay at your house." That was personal. That was intentional. Out of all the people in the crowd, Jesus saw him, and He sees you in the same way. No matter what the world has labeled you, no matter how unworthy you feel, Jesus calls you by name because He knows you personally. Even King David marveled at this truth when he wrote, "Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways." This is not a distant God uninterested in your life. This is a God who is deeply involved in every moment of your existence. He knows the details of your day before you ever live them. He knows the struggles you will face before they ever come. And yet, He still calls you to Himself. There is nothing in your life that escapes His knowledge. He sees every time you've been hurt, every time you've been betrayed, every time you've felt alone. He sees the doubts you wrestle with, the questions you're afraid to ask, the insecurities that keep you awake at night. And through it all, He never turns away. The world may reject you. People may misunderstand you. But God never will. He knows you fully and still loves you completely. Many people go through life searching for identity, searching for a place to belong, searching for someone who truly understands them. But the answer has always been in the one who created you. You were never meant to navigate life alone. You were never meant to figure everything out on your own. From the very beginning, God has been calling you, drawing you to Himself because He knows you better than you know yourself. He knows your weaknesses, but He also knows the strength He placed inside of you. He knows your failures, but He also sees the victories He has planned for you. He knows your past, but He is far more concerned with your future. When God calls someone, He doesn't call them because they are perfect. He doesn't call them because they have everything together. He calls them because He loves them. He called Moses even though he doubted himself. He called Gideon even though he was afraid. He called Peter even though he had moments of failure. And today He is calling you, not because of what you have done, but because of who He is. Because He knows you, because He has a purpose for you, because from the beginning of time, He has always been waiting for you to answer His call. Life can be exhausting. The weight of responsibilities, the pain of past failures, the burdens of regret, and the struggles of daily survival can leave a person feeling drained and broken. There are moments when the soul grows weary, when the heart feels too heavy to carry, when it seems like no matter how hard you try, the obstacles before you are just too great. But it is in these moments that Jesus calls the weary and the broken to himself. He doesn't call the ones who have it all figured out, the ones who appear strong on the outside, the ones who seem to have everything together. He calls those who are tired, those who are hurting, those who feel like they have nothing left to give. When Jesus walked the earth, he did not seek out the powerful or the self-sufficient. He sought out the ones who were desperate for something more, the ones who had reached the end of themselves. He called the sick, the outcast, the sinner, the ones society had given up on. He spoke to those who had been rejected, those who had been cast aside, and he offered them something no one else could: rest for their souls. One of the most powerful invitations Jesus ever gave was when he said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." He wasn't speaking only about physical exhaustion. He was speaking to those carrying the weight of shame, the weight of fear, the weight of trying to measure up, the weight of trying to prove their worth. He was speaking to those who had tried everything and still felt empty, to those who felt like failures, to those who were ready to give up. He wasn't offering just a temporary relief. He was offering true, lasting rest, a peace that could only be found in him. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus shows again and again that he calls the weary and the broken, and when they come to him, he does not turn them away. There was a woman who had been suffering for 12 years, spending everything she had on doctors, searching for a cure, only to be left in the same pain, the same suffering, the same hopelessness. She had nothing left. She was weak. She was weary. She was broken. And yet, when she reached out to touch the hem of Jesus' garment, in that moment, her suffering ended. Jesus didn't just heal her body. He acknowledged her. He saw her. He called her daughter. She was no longer just a suffering woman lost in the crowd. She was a child of God, restored and made whole. Then there was the blind man sitting by the roadside begging for mercy. He had spent his life in darkness, ignored by the world, discarded as nothing more than a nuisance. But when he heard that Jesus was passing by, he cried out with everything in him, "Son of David, have mercy on me." The crowd tried to silence him, but Jesus stopped. He called the man forward and asked, "What do you want me to do for you?" With faith and desperation, the man asked for his sight. And in an instant, Jesus healed him. Again and again, Jesus calls the ones the world overlooks. The weary fisherman who had caught nothing all night. The woman at the well who had been searching for love in all the wrong places. The paralyzed man who had been lying in the same place for years, waiting for someone to help him. Each one had reached the end of their own strength. Each one had nothing left. And it was in that place of exhaustion and brokenness that Jesus met them. He didn't tell them to try harder. He didn't tell them to fix themselves first. He simply called them just as they were, and when they came to him, he changed everything. Some people believe they have to be strong for God to accept them. They think they have to fix their lives, clean themselves up, and figure things out before they can come to Jesus. But that is not how he works. He calls the weary and the broken, not the ones who pretend to have it all together. He calls the ones who are at the end of their rope, the ones who have no other options, the ones who are tired of trying to do it all on their own. He calls them not to burden them with more, but to lift the burdens they are already carrying. The world tells you that strength is found in independence, that you have to push through, that you have to keep going no matter how exhausted you feel. But Jesus offers a different way. He offers rest. He offers renewal. He offers peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from success or achievement, but from knowing that you don't have to carry everything alone. From knowing that there is a Savior who sees you in your exhaustion, who knows every pain you've suffered, who understands every tear you've cried, and who still calls you to himself with open arms. Throughout Scripture, there are countless moments when God calls individuals personally. He does not speak in general terms or issue commands to a nameless crowd. He calls people by name. He reaches into their lives, into their circumstances, into their struggles, and calls them for a purpose. These moments are not just ancient stories. They reveal the heart of God, showing that He knows each person intimately and has a specific plan for their life. One of the clearest examples of a personal calling is found in the story of Moses. He was a man who had once lived in the palace of Pharaoh, but after fleeing Egypt in shame, he became a shepherd in the wilderness. For 40 years, he lived in obscurity, far from the power and prestige he had once known. But then one day, God called him, not in a dream, not through another person, but directly through a burning bush that was not consumed by the flame. When Moses approached, God called out to him, "Moses, Moses." It was personal, it was direct, it was a moment that changed everything. God was not calling a crowd, He was calling a man who felt unworthy, a man who had doubts, a man who had failed. Yet in that moment, God revealed that He had not forgotten Moses. He had a plan for his life, a purpose that had been waiting for the right time. Even when Moses resisted, even when he questioned his own ability, God assured him that he was chosen, that he was called, that he was seen. Another powerful example is found in the life of Samuel. As a young boy serving in the temple, Samuel did not yet know the voice of God, but one night as he lay in bed, he heard a voice calling his name, "Samuel, Samuel." Thinking it was the priest Eli, he ran to him only to be told that no one had called him. This happened 3 times until Eli realized that it was God Himself speaking. When Samuel finally responded with the words, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening," everything changed. From that moment forward, God spoke to him directly, guiding him into a lifetime of prophetic ministry. Samuel was just a boy, inexperienced, unaware of the divine calling upon his life, but God knew him, God called him, and when Samuel responded, he stepped into the destiny that had been prepared for him. There was a young man who came to Jesus seeking eternal life. He had wealth, status, and a good reputation. He had followed the commandments since childhood. But when Jesus called him to leave it all behind and follow Him, he walked away sorrowful. He had heard the call. He had stood face to face with the Savior, but he hesitated. He counted the cost, and in his hesitation, he missed what could have been the greatest decision of his life. Jesus spoke often about the urgency of the call. He said, "No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." He warned that those who made excuses, those who delayed, those who thought they had more time would miss their moment. He told a parable of a great banquet where invitations were sent, but one by one people gave their reasons for not coming. One had a field to tend to, another had oxen to test, another had just been married. They all had plans, they all had responsibilities, but in their preoccupation with the things of this world, they missed the invitation. The call of God is not something to take lightly. It is not something to push aside until life feels more convenient. There are countless people who have felt the tug of God on their hearts, but told themselves, "I will respond later. I will seek Him when I am older. I will surrender when life settles down." But tomorrow is never promised. The rich man in Jesus' parable had big plans for his future. He had stored up wealth, built bigger barns, and was ready to enjoy his life. But that very night his life was required of him. He had prepared for everything except eternity. There is a reason why Scripture says, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. Every time a person ignores God's call, their heart becomes a little hard, a little more resistant, a little more deaf to his voice. The longer a person waits, the easier it becomes to keep waiting. But the truth is, every person is moving in one of two directions: closer to God or further from him. There is no standing still. Saul of Tarsus was a man determined to destroy the church, to silence the message of Christ. But on the road to Damascus, Jesus called him by name, and in an instant, everything changed. Saul could have resisted, he could have ignored the voice, but instead he asked, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" That single moment of surrender set him on a path that would change the course of history. When Jesus called Zacchaeus, he told him, "Come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." It was not a request for another time. It was now. Zacchaeus could have hesitated, could have stayed in his tree, could have let the moment pass. But instead he responded immediately, and his life was never the same. The urgency of responding to God's call is not just about salvation, it is about obedience. There are some whom God is calling into ministry, but fear holds them back. There are some whom he is calling to step out in faith, to trust him with everything, but they hesitate, unsure of what it will cost. But delayed obedience is often lost opportunity. When Jesus called his disciples, they followed immediately. When he called others who wanted to wait, who wanted to settle things first, they were left behind. Every person has a moment when God speaks, a moment when he reaches out and calls them to something greater. But that moment is not forever. It is now. The call of God is an open door, but doors do not stay open indefinitely. There comes a time when they close. The tragedy is not in missing a temporary opportunity, but in missing eternity itself. There are many who believe that their past disqualifies them from being called by God. They look at their mistakes, their failures, their regrets, and they think that they have gone too far, done too much, or sinned too greatly for Jesus to want anything to do with them. But all throughout Scripture, we see that Jesus does not call the perfect, the righteous, or the ones with spotless records. He calls the broken, the outcasts, the sinners, and the ones the world has given up on. He calls those who think they are too far gone, and proves that no one is beyond his reach. One of the clearest examples of this is Peter. He was a man full of passion, full of zeal, but also full of weakness. He was the one who boldly declared that he would never deny Jesus, that he would follow him even to death. But when the moment of testing came, when the pressure was on, Peter denied even knowing Christ. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. He swore, he cursed, he insisted that he had no part in Jesus. And when the rooster crowed, when he realized what he had done, he went out and wept bitterly. He had failed in the worst way possible. He had turned his back on the very one he had promised to stand by. But Jesus was not done with Peter. After his resurrection, Jesus went to find him. He did not condemn him. He did not remind him of his failure. Instead, he called him again. He asked Peter, "Do you love me?" And then he gave him a mission: feed my sheep. Peter's past did not disqualify him. His failure was not the end of his story. Jesus restored him and called him to something greater. Then there was the woman at the well. She was a Samaritan, a woman rejected by society, known for her sinful past. She had been married 5 times and was now living with a man who was not her husband. She came to the well in the heat of the day when no one else would be there because she was tired of the stares, the whispers, the judgment. But Jesus was waiting for her. He spoke to her, not with condemnation, but with love. He told her everything she had ever done, and yet instead of turning her away, he offered her living water. He called her to a new life, and she became one of the first evangelists, running back to her town to tell everyone about the man who knew her completely and still accepted her. Zacchaeus was another man with a past. He was a tax collector, a thief, a man who had built his wealth by cheating others. He was hated by his own people, seen as a traitor and outcast. But when Jesus came to Jericho, he looked up at Zacchaeus in a tree and called him by name. "Come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." Zacchaeus had done nothing to deserve this invitation. He had not cleaned up his life, had not repaid what he had stolen, had not changed his ways. But Jesus called him anyway. And because of that call, Zacchaeus' heart was transformed. He repaid those he had wronged and gave half of his possessions to the poor. His past did not stop Jesus from calling him. It was the call of Jesus that changed his past into a testimony. Paul, once known as Saul, had a past so dark that he actively persecuted the church, arresting and even approving the killing of Christians. He was a man consumed with self-righteousness, convinced that he was doing God's will by destroying the followers of Jesus. But on the road to Damascus, Jesus called him by name. "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" In that moment, everything changed. Saul, the enemy of Christ, became Paul, the greatest messenger of the gospel. The man who once sought to destroy the church became the man who built it. If anyone could have been disqualified by their past, it was him. But Jesus does not see as the world sees. He does not reject those with a past. He redeems them. Time and time again, Jesus calls those who feel unworthy, those who are broken, those who believe they have gone too far. He does not see them for what they have done. He sees them for what they can become through him. No sin is too great for his grace. No failure is beyond his redemption. No past is too dark for his light to break through. He does not wait for people to clean themselves up before calling them. He calls them as they are and then transforms them from the inside out. There are many who feel that they are not good enough for God, that they must fix their lives before coming to him. But the truth is, no one can make themselves worthy. No one can erase their own past. Only Jesus can do that. And he does not call the perfect. He perfects those he calls. When Jesus calls, it is not just an invitation, it is a promise. It is a call to leave behind the temporary and step into the eternal. It is a call to surrender what is fleeting in exchange for what is lasting. But the call of Christ is not always easy. It requires faith, sacrifice, and a willingness to trust even when the path ahead is uncertain. Yet for those who answer his call, the reward is far greater than anything this world could ever offer. There is the reward of purpose. Many people go through life searching for meaning, chasing success, wealth, and recognition, only to find themselves empty and unfulfilled. But when Jesus calls, he calls with a purpose. He does not lead people aimlessly. He calls them into a life that is meaningful, a life that has eternal significance. When Peter, James, and John left their fishing boats to follow him, they were not just leaving behind their livelihood, they were stepping into their true purpose. They were called to be fishers of men, to take part in something greater than themselves. They could have lived their lives catching fish, building their business, and making a name for themselves in their small town. Instead, they answered his call and became part of a movement that changed the world. There's the reward of transformation. No one who truly follows Christ remains the same. When he calls, he does not just change a person's path, he changes their heart. Zacchaeus, the tax collector, was transformed from a greedy man into a generous one. The woman at the well, marked by shame, became a bold witness for Christ. Paul, once a persecutor of the church, became its greatest defender. Those who answer his call do not just find salvation, they find a new identity. They become new creations, no longer defined by their past, but by the grace of God. There is the reward of peace. The world is filled with uncertainty, anxiety, and fear. People chase after security, trying to control their circumstances. But true peace cannot be found in the things of this world. Jesus calls his followers into a peace that surpasses all understanding. It is not a peace based on circumstances, but on the assurance that he is in control. The disciples faced storms, persecution, and hardships, yet they had a peace that could not be shaken because they knew the one who called them was faithful. Those who answer his call may not have an easy life, but they will have a peace that carries them through every trial. There is the reward of joy. The world offers happiness that fades, pleasures that are temporary, and satisfaction that never lasts. But Jesus calls his followers into a joy that cannot be taken away. It is the joy of knowing him, the joy of walking with him, the joy of seeing lives changed by his power. It is the joy that sustained Paul in prison, the joy that led the early Christians to sing even in the face of persecution. Those who answer his call may face difficulties, but they will know a joy that is deeper than circumstances. There is joy that comes from the presence of God. The greatest reward of answering his call is not found in this life, but in the life to come. Jesus never promised that those who follow him would have an easy road, but he did promise that they would have an eternal home. He spoke of treasures in heaven, of crowns that will never fade, of a kingdom that will never end. Every sacrifice made in this life for his sake will be repaid 100-fold in eternity. Those who live for themselves may gain the whole world, but they will lose their soul. But those who answer his call may lose everything in this world, yet they will gain eternity with him. When Jesus calls, he calls with a promise. He calls into a life of purpose, transformation, peace, joy, and eternal reward. The path may not always be easy, but the reward is greater than anything this world can offer. Those who answer his call will find that what they gain far outweighs anything they leave behind. Jesus calls each person by name, not because of their perfection, but because of his love. He calls the weary, the broken, and those burdened by their past, offering them hope, redemption, and a new life. Throughout Scripture, we see how he has always called people personally, meeting them where they are and leading them into a life of purpose and transformation. His call is not something to take lightly or delay, for it carries eternal significance. No matter the failures, the mistakes, or the regrets, Jesus does not turn away those who come to him. He redeems what was lost, restores what was broken, and gives a new identity to those who respond to his voice. His call is not just to salvation, but to a life filled with meaning, peace, and joy. Those who answer his call find themselves forever changed, stepping into a journey that leads not only to abundant life now, but to an eternal reward beyond anything this world can offer. But his call requires a response. It is not enough to hear it and walk away. It is not enough to recognize it and delay. The invitation is open, but the time to answer is now. He calls with urgency because he knows what is at stake. The greatest tragedy is not a life of failure, but a life that ignores His voice. The greatest reward is not found in the things of this world, but in the eternal promise of walking with Him. The question is not whether Jesus is calling, but whether you will answer.